This is KGW News at 11.
Now at 11, thousands once again protesting downtown, marking 2 months since George Floyd died at the hands of Minneapolis police officers. Protesters are calling for justice, an end to systemic racism, and now calling for federal agents to leave the city. This is a live look near the federal courthouse where we've seen violent clashes night after night. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Brittany Folgers. For more than 50 days, we've seen protests that have now captured national attention. In the last week, they've seen a resurgence, escalated by the presence of federal officers. Last night, we saw one of the largest crowds in weeks, and it did turn violent, with federal officers deploying tear gas after protesters launched fireworks at the courthouse. We have crews monitoring the situation downtown again tonight. Let's bring in Art Edwards now. Art.
I'm standing here live at Southwest Madison and 3rd, really about a half a block away from everybody from where the protesters have gathered. You can see that they have taken over 3rd Avenue right in front of the Justice Center and then the federal courthouse and probably down to Salmon. We can also see from this vantage point that they are starting to mess with the fence a little bit, shake it around a little bit, which is something that they have been continuously asked not to do. There have been people who have been gathering here and coming here from various other parts of the city all evening long. This is sort of the culmination of a day of protests in the city of Portland.
Early in the day, people gathered across the street from the federal courthouse in downtown Portland. It's been the site of protesting and clashes with police. People spent time today writing messages in chalk on the sidewalk. Andra Light has been at the protest the last couple of days. Her message: bring back the focus. Black Lives Matter.
Now that the feds are here, it's easy to get lost in all of the other causes that are up for everyone right now. But the reason this started is because of Black Lives Matter and that movement, and that's the most important thing that we need to continue to focus on.
She worries about how federal authorities are handling things, but will still protest. Mariana Lindsay, her husband, and their 2-year-old son showed up downtown this afternoon. Lindsay's 11-month-old niece and her family were there as well. They all planned to leave long before nightfall, but Lindsay believes they needed to come downtown.
I think that it's important to show that this is a movement that everyone needs to be a part of, and they're little white kids with a lot of privilege, and they need to be part of creating change too and see that that's possible.
The protests have turned violent at times. Since early July, federal officers have detained or arrested 60 people. The assistant U.S. attorney for the Oregon District talked about that today. Craig Gabriel said the fence around the federal courthouse was put up to create some space between the building and people doing damage to it. He also said if protesters don't seek to damage or destroy the fence, then officers have no need to go outside the fence or leave federal property. Teachers gathered in Cathedral Park in North Portland this evening for a Black Lives Matter march. They wanted to show their respect for the movement.
We've been asked to keep the focus on Black Lives Matter with everything that's happening in the city right now, and so I wanted to make sure I attended an event that was directly focused on that.
One of the other things the teacher said is that they hope that everything can remain peaceful, that there's no violence at the protests. They say that they've seen enough of that so far in these events. So now we hear the first of the loud noises out here. That probably was a firework that somebody had out here. Again, they've been working on the fence a little bit, some of the protesters who are up close. So far, we haven't heard any announcements telling them to stop or anything of that nature. And we'll see how things play out for the rest of the night. I think I can begin to hear a little bit of an announcement right now, and we'll see how things play out from here. Back to you.
All right, Art Edwards, thank you in downtown Portland for us tonight. Now, we have been covering these protests from the very beginning, and if you missed any of it, head to the KGW YouTube channel. We've created a dedicated playlist about the Portland protests. And it's not just here. Protests are continuing in other parts of the country as well. In Seattle, police have arrested at least 45 people tonight and have declared a protest on Capitol Hill a riot. Police say a fire was set at a construction site for a youth detention center. Windows were broken at a Starbucks and walls spray painted with graffiti, and the East Police Precinct was damaged. Federal agents are now also in Seattle. They arrived Thursday and are on standby to protect federal buildings. Protests in Louisville, Kentucky turned violent today. Shots were fired at a protest downtown, leaving 3 people hurt. Police released surveillance video. They say a gun was accidentally fired by a member of the armed left-wing black militia group NFAC. The NFAC and Black Lives Matter demonstrators are demanding justice for Breonna Taylor. The 26-year-old was shot and killed in a police raid on her home in Louisville back in March.
We want to reform the police so it doesn't happen again. We don't just want justice this one time. We want to change it so it doesn't continue to happen.
Back here in Portland, one man is dead and another has life-threatening injuries after a shooting in Southeast. Portland police responded to reported gunshots in the area of Southeast Division Street and Southeast 158th Avenue. They found 2 men with gunshot wounds. Officers secured the scene and say there's no threat to the community. Smoke billowed out from Sauvie Island this afternoon as a wildfire burned 91 acres. Multiple crews responded to the fire near Willow Bar. It closed down roads and visitors were asked to stay off the island. The Multnomah County Sheriff's Office says a deputy was one of the first on scene and actually used a garden hose to help neighbors keep the fire away from property. The fire was contained around 6 o'clock. No one was injured and the cause is under investigation. Let's go right to meteorologist Chris McGinnis. Chris, what can you tell us about this?
Well, fire danger obviously ratcheting up. We are in peak fire season here in the Pacific Northwest. The combination of the dry stretch of weather that we've had, it's been 5 weeks since we've had significant measurable rain at Portland International Airport. So again, things are ripe, and now we're starting to heat things up. And that's kind of the second and really the big weather headline, I guess, is the hot stuff coming our way as we go into tomorrow. We do have a heat advisory in effect for everywhere in that peach shading. It goes into effect at 8 a.m. Sunday, and it's through the day Sunday and Monday. We're expecting high temperatures both days in the range of about 95 to 102 in that peach shaded area. Let's go get a quick look at Futurecast here. By noon tomorrow, our computer model has much of the valley up near 90, and there you see by 5 o'clock Sunday afternoon, Salem at 100, Portland 97, Astoria 88. That would be a record high in Astoria. Portland, we're going to be close. Salem, not quite, but you get the idea. A hot day tomorrow, even hotter as we go, I think, into Monday. More on that coming up in just a bit.
All right, Chris, thank you. Coming up, a new option to connect with our loved ones in long-term care. The pandemic has kept many seniors separated from family, but a rule change could help bring them together. That, plus the latest on case numbers after the break. Turning now to the coronavirus. The Oregon Health Authority reported 4 new deaths today and 408 new cases. Look at this graph right here. The blue lines are showing you the number of new cases each day. The dark blue dots are a 14-day average. And as you can see, both are still trending up. The Oregon Health Authority says 20 to 29-year-olds make up the largest percentage of cases since the pandemic started. And they point out social gatherings have added to the spike. OHA says that the state is on a troubling trajectory, and they're urging Oregonians to keep gatherings small, wash hands frequently, and wear those masks. Oregon seniors kept away from family during the pandemic now have a new option. The state is allowing outdoor visits at long-term care facilities. Galen Etlin explains the hoops that you'll have to jump through and where to go from here.
It's very difficult for my husband in our situation.
Carol Biskupik Knight's husband, John, was diagnosed with early onset dementia at age 57. He moved into a memory care facility last March, and COVID-19 shut down most visits.
It is still very restrictive.
New state rules will make it a little better, allowing long-term care facilities in Oregon to organize visits outside only.
It's a step in the right direction.
Just seeing somebody in person is different than seeing them on Zoom.
Dr. Ann McQueen with Oregon DHS says people need that social interaction with loved ones, especially those with dementia. But right now, it's tricky.
You have to protect yourself as well as the people that you're visiting.
Matt Ryan is the general manager of the Ackerley at Timberland, an independent living and long-term care facility in Portland. He says companies like his have to send safe visit plans to the state for approval to ensure guests wear masks, are limited to small groups, have designated space outside, and are screened ahead of time.
At the front desk, we're able to check your temperature, have you fill out a document that asks you some questions about where you've been and who you are.
The goal is to vet out visitors who may expose vulnerable seniors to COVID-19.
Really think carefully about whether you should be going into one of those settings.
For Carol, she has been isolating to reduce risk of exposing her husband to the virus. Residents like him are still allowed to leave with family for appointments. But for these newly allowed outdoor visits at facilities, she says a key piece is missing.
No reaching out to touch, no hugging.
Not being able to hold her husband's hand, which is confusing and difficult for someone with dementia.
What do you hope for the future in the next few weeks, next few months?
Safe re-entry. My hope is that I could be in the room just with him, or we walk in the garden, because that's not even an option right now.
That challenge is on everyone's shoulders. If a facility has a staff member or resident test positive for COVID-19, these visits have to stop until everyone is okay again.
Everybody's in this together and wants to do the right thing and make sure that everyone stays as safe as possible.
If we don't get this under control, it is going to just mean longer and longer.
Many families, like Carol's, relying on community action against COVID-19. In Portland, I'm Galen Etlin for KGW News.
Well, thousands of out-of-work Oregonians have yet to see a dime from the employment department. To make matters worse, the extra $600 a week in extended unemployment benefits runs out this weekend. Christelle Kumwe explains.
Scared, not going to survive without it.
Nina Sage is a self-employed professional photographer. She hasn't been able to work in months due to coronavirus restrictions.
Everything has come to a complete halt.
She applied to the CARES Act's Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program for self-employed workers who otherwise would not qualify for regular unemployment benefits.
I guess I could say I was one of the lucky ones. It only took me 12 weeks to get paid.
Sage says she received $600 per week plus a weekly benefit of $205.
After taxes, $174 a week. And then the 600 comes in at $504. When that 600 goes away, there's no way to, meet the business overhead, let alone personal.
While that extra funding officially ends July 31st, for many, the $600 payment stopped this weekend.
Luckily, I was smart and I took the back pay and prepared for a rainy day, but if I go more than a couple of months, I'm going to have to start selling my camera gear.
Just last week, the Oregon Employment Department says it paid the extra $600 to more than 130,000 Oregonians. That doesn't include those whose claims have not yet been processed. If you haven't been paid for weeks between March 29th and July 25th, you will still get the extra $600 per week for those weeks you were eligible once your claim is processed. For others like Sage, the clock is ticking.
At the time I got the back pay, which was some point in June, I was right at the point that I wouldn't have been able to pay any bills in July. I mean, I'd survived that long on, the kindness of others and my savings. So that's where I'm going to be at again.
It doesn't look like Congress will pass legislation in time to extend those benefits, but Sage hopes it comes sooner rather than later.
It's scary at the same time, and I really know I'm luckier than some, but it is still scary.
Now that the extra $600 per week is ending, the Oregon Employment Department says there are resources to help people pay rent, food, and much more. We have more information and links to those resources on our website at kgw.com. I'm Christelle Kumwe for KGW News.
Let's take a live look from our Wells Fargo Skycam tonight. After the break, Chris is back with a look at the hot weather headed our way.
Would you believe that the month of July, we're actually running about a half a degree below average for the month cumulatively? That's going to change in a hurry as we head into the next couple of days. Here's a look at the high temperatures, by the way, for our Saturday. Astoria, 67. Tack on about 20 degrees. I think that's what we're looking at tomorrow. Portland, we topped out at 82. Salem, 82. We're probably tacking on a good 15 degrees at least tomorrow. So we've got a toasty forecast coming our way to close out the weekend. Tomorrow's record high in Portland, by the way, 99, set back at 98, and I think we're going to be close. The last time Portland hit 100 degrees, July of 2018, the last time Portland had 3 consecutive 90-degree days. You got to go back to that hot record-setting summer of 2018. So far, 2020 has been kind to the Rose City. If you don't like 90-degree heat, we've only measured 4 90-degree days officially at PDX so far. But again, that changes tomorrow. I think we're looking at 2, 3, maybe 4 consecutive days of 90-degree heat before we get a little break in our latest shot here. All right, so here's a look at the plan for tomorrow. Full sunshine, off to a warm start, maybe 90 degrees by lunchtime, and I've got 98 as our forecast high for Portland. Going to be a toasty one, and of course we'll have full sunshine to enjoy as well with those hot temperatures. Satellite radar loop showing clear skies over the northwest. The story across the nation, I want to zoom out just a little bit. Hurricane Hannah making landfall earlier this afternoon on the South Texas coast. The storm now, of course, going to weaken, but lots of rain and severe weather, gusty winds, even some tornadic thunderstorms for them. Boy, we could use some of that rain, right? July so far here in Portland, only 0.05 of an inch of rain. The last measurable rain is almost 3 weeks ago, and the last significant rain, like, more than a trace or so, you got to go back 5 weeks. June 20th, that's the last time we got enough to really water your lawn. And I don't see anything like that in the forecast the next couple of days. Here's Futurecast tomorrow. Wall-to-wall sunshine, of course, and we'll keep that going into Monday as well. There's one little hiccup along the Cascades where we could see some showers popping and maybe some thunderstorms. That's always a double-edged sword this time of the year because the rain is good, but the lightning can be a prolific fire starter. And with us now in peak fire season, that's something that fire crews are going to keep a very, very close eye on. In any event, things are generally dry here for the next several days until we get maybe to the end of the week. Futurecast does like the idea of bringing a front through the region as we go into the day on Friday. And if that happens, that could lead to our first measurable rain, our first significant measurable rain in weeks here in the Rose City. That's a big if, and before we get there, we've got a whole lot of hot to get through. 98 tomorrow. Again, Sunday's record is 99, so we're going to be close. 100 on Monday. That would not be a record, but our first 100-degree day in 2 years. And it looks like we keep the heat on for a couple more days before we start to cool it off a little bit. And we've got that shower chance we'll keep our eyes on for Friday. We'll be right back.
He always wanted to improve the lives of others without any concern for himself. His deep faith in God made him extraordinary.
Friends and family gathered today to remember the life of Congressman and civil rights leader John Lewis. Today, a celebration of life was held in Troy, Alabama, where he grew up. Tomorrow, Lewis will cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma one last time. It was there in 1965 that Alabama state troopers beat him and others marching for civil rights. Tomorrow, he'll lie in state at the Alabama state capitol. His body will then be flown to Washington, D.C. for a series of farewell services there. His funeral service and burial will take place Thursday in Atlanta. Condolences are pouring in for Regis Philbin. The legendary TV personality died Friday of natural causes. Philbin's career spanned 60 years. He became well known for his morning shows Live with Kathy Lee Gifford and Kelly Ripa, as well as for hosting the hit game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Regis Philbin was 88 years old. Well, a moment in mid-air is increasing tensions between the U.S. and Iran. Iran says a U.S. fighter jet flew too close to an Iranian plane, forcing it to swerve to avoid a collision, injuring some passengers on board. The U.S. military says the F-15 was doing a visual inspection because the Iranian plane was flying near a U.S. base in Syria and that it was a safe distance away from the plane as well. Well, the incident has sparked outrage in Iran, with some calling it an act of terrorism. The last time tensions were this high was back in January, when Iran, fearing a U.S. attack, accidentally shot down a passenger jet, killing 176 people. An update on the protests that we're seeing in Portland when we come back. Well, the situation in downtown Portland intensifying. Let's bring in Art Edwards live. Art, what can you tell us?
Well, just a few minutes ago, we could hear people using fireworks aimed towards the federal courthouse. And then the next thing we knew, we could detect that there was some kind of gas in the air because we had to put our gas masks on. Eyes started burning, started coughing. People started leaving the area, so a number of people have decided to leave the area and move away. You can hear that they're making announcements up by the fence to see if they can probably disperse the crowd. So far, we know that the federal officers have moved outside of the building a little bit and towards the street, but there haven't been, as far as we can tell,
any real serious confrontations, but we'll continue to keep an eye on this and see what happens the rest of the evening. Back to you.
All right, Art Edwards reporting for us in downtown tonight. We'll continue to keep you updated and give you the latest updates on Sunrise. Have a good night.